And cross my fingers, hope to die that it works. Hello, Lida. Welcome to
Hi,
the Integration
Olivia.
Chronicles.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. At the Integration Chronicles, TAP Integration is on a mission to define integration, converting that definition to accessible and actionable tools for individuals at all stages of transformation. And our goal is to empower facilitators to thrive and amplify their gifts. You are a facilitator, doctor that I want to amplify because I think the work that you're doing is incredible and so helpful and so needed. So, welcome to the podcast and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I think the work that you're doing is so important, especially in the area of integration, because there's a lack of it for sure.
Thank you so much. So, I have a couple questions here. We want to talk about your integration journey and what has worked for you. So, looking back, what were the pivotal moments that led you to starting to shift into facilitation work? And what was your life like before you took that leap?
Yeah, the facilitation, how did I take it? It was the medicine that told me to take that leap. Um, I was invited by a lovely friend of mine who had been in this realm holding space for years, in large groups, traveling through the country. And she landed here in New Mexico and she invited me to, have a private one-on-one facilitation with psilocybin and then hop afterwards. And it was by a river. It's where we actually got married in the mountains. And it was that journey. It was that journey of um, it was a moment that I felt there was a rebirth, and I got into the river and it was given to me. It was like the medicine handed it over and was like, it's time for you to step into your power and purpose of bringing serenity to others and to teach them that. And I was like, whoa, like, did everybody hear that? You know? But when I was coming out of the river, I remember having shaky legs as if I was learning to walk. It was very symbolic and really embodying that. And that was many years ago. That was 5 years ago. And that was the last time that I macrodosed with psilocybin.
And was it
And
the first time?
no, I had, macrodosed with psilocybin many times, but that was my last time. And, so far, if an opportunity presents itself that feels aligned, I will take it. But it just hasn't happened. And it was after that 5 years ago that it was, just shown to me that it's time for me to step in to the role of facilitator. It was after really examining my traumas, learning from them, and moving through, not being stuck, not holding on to, because it's a very important um, role. Being a facilitator is not something to be taken lightly. The energy that we bring into facilitation, into ceremony, affects the beings who are in ceremony with you and have chosen you on their path. What a privilege is that? And before that, I didn't feel ready yet. I was not energetically ready yet to take on that role.
Hmm. So many questions I have coming up. One of them is you have such a joyful countenance and you're so happy, open, warm, bubbly. And I'm curious if has it always been that way? I've only known you to be like that, but I'm curious, like in your path to becoming a doctor and working with clients, was that how people would have described you?
Such a great question. It's waxed and waned over the years. Let me tell you, in high school, it waned because I came from Iran to America at age 14, left family, friends, all of that I knew, language, culture behind, came to an all-American high school, did really well, surprisingly, because my parents were amazing is really why. And they held us through the process, but I didn't know English. And I was always a funny, like bubbly kid. And all of a sudden, all of that was taken away from me, and I was very depressed. I was not fun to be around, period. So that was high school. And then in college, I decided if I wanted to become a physician, I needed to step into the role of communicating and connecting. And so college was very intentional for me in creating deep, meaningful connections and a lot of them. And so I created that myself, but it's in my blood. I'm also Persian. That's what we do. Um, and then in grad school was fine. Medical school was beautiful. Lots of wonderful friends and connections. Residency was great. And then we get into becoming an attending physician when I was licensed. And then all of my cohorts left and to different jobs. And I felt very isolated. And it was during that time that I became extremely burnt out. And for a couple of years, I was in a very dark place. And no, you didn't really want to be around me. I didn't have anything good to say, just sarcastic. I had like a cactus. All my thorns were out. Like, watch out, Lita's coming through. It was just a very dark place for me. Of course, that's what I was projecting outwardly. But that's exactly what I needed to experience to be in this position today. So yeah, it was a very dark place for sure. And it takes a ton of work to be in the place that I am today, in that authentic self where I'm not trying to people please either. Because in college, when I was like, woohoo, part of it was people pleasing, a big part of it. When in residency, I was, I had a beautiful cohort, beautiful community, but a lot of what I was doing was also people pleasing.
Mm.
But now it's not. It's that there's a lot of self-love, and developing self-love is a journey of its own. And yeah, now it comes from there.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that was going to lead me to my next question, which kind of goes back to what you were saying about, becoming a facilitator, needing to really look at where your own energy leaks, energy stagnation, or blockages are. Was there anything that you could describe, anything tangible that you were holding on to that you recognize was blocking you from being able to step into a role as a facilitator that needed to be moved or integrated post journey?
Yes, there were patterns of behaviors, of thoughts, of limitations that I was putting on myself, of self-sabotage, of
What was
really not listening.
your favorite flavor of yeah, describe
Self-sabotage.
your saboteur if you're into it.
Yeah, yeah, putting everybody else in front of myself, like really nurturing others to a point of completely forgetting myself and getting lost in it. That external part that was just like out there and really helping everyone and anyone, the energy leeches, the positive people. And then a lot of positive people actually leave your life because, you are bound by the energy leeches in your life. And so that was my biggest one, I would say.
That's a big one. I'm curious how you see the people pleasing, particularly disrupting your work as a facilitator. Like generally, if a facilitator struggles with people pleasing, how does
Mm.
that disrupt their ability to fully show up as a facilitator?
Oh man, such a great question. I believe as a conscious facilitator is one who is also able to say no, to set proper boundaries and say, this is not appropriate. This is where we draw the line. That's where the self-love comes in. Um, so boundary setting, really, really important as a facilitator. Holding that beautiful container that you're in with that the highest energy that you can be in, right? And creating that bubble for the individuals, beings who are in your presence, and you have the privilege of guiding during, a high dose ceremony, even a low dose. If you just keep telling them you're doing great, you're enabling them because you're trying to people please, you can absolutely harm people, and you're leading them astray instead of saying, listen, you got to cut this out. This is what I'm seeing. I'm here to share this with you because you've chosen me as your guide. And sometimes, another facilitator, she brought this up, which was really great, is that there's also a death in facilitation that can happen of the individual, of their past identity, and you have to be okay facilitating that.
Mm.
And if you're a people pleaser and you have not seen it, you have not healed it, you have not figured out where it comes from, then that's a very dangerous thing for the people you're facilitating for.
Yeah. What are three tips you could give our readers and listeners about how to integrate a process of letting go of people pleasing? So let's say you do a journey, you realize that your saboteur is a people pleaser and the thing that's sort of limiting you from stepping into your power, from becoming the facilitator you want to be. What would you tell that person afterwards to help them integrate that understanding, that insight, and turn it into changed behavior? What actions would you recommend them to take?
You know, meditation, that silent time with yourself and examination, examining your relationships with others, how they feel within you. And then when you are in that people pleasing mode, what does that feel like to you? And because our physically, even physically, how does it feel to me in my physical body? Where do I feel it? I feel it in my head. I feel the pressure in my head when I'm going all out and energetically giving too much. I'm like, ooh, there's pressure in my head. That means I'm not in my heart for me. And so sitting with that and feeling that, and also feeling what self-love feels like in that self-care. I equate self-care to self-love, to recognition of the sacred within us. And in recognition of the sacred within, we're also recognizing the sacred of our universe,
Yeah.
of the source, and we're taking care of it.
So self-acceptance is the antidote really to imposter syndrome. And what I hear you saying is self-care and self-love is the antidote to people pleasing. So first step, you said identify what the symptoms are. What is the feeling within you that you're overextending and you're stepping out of alignment with self and into the people pleasing or fawning.
Right.
Identify where does it uniquely reside in you or your body? And
Yeah.
it and
Yeah. And then becoming an observer, becoming an observer of just your life and examining. I think that's a really big thing for me that's helped me is understanding where it's come from. Where did I pick up these patterns from? For me, it was, my culture is imbued in people pleasing and how we even speak, when people come to your house, you give them your best food. You may go hungry at night yourself, but if you have a guest, you give them your best, period. And so that self-sacrifice and your family sacrifice in lieu of others, it's so deep in my culture. I saw parents do it, I saw aunts do it, uncles do it, I saw the entire community do it, my entire life. And so the recognition, as you said, I would say is paramount. It's a paramount step into healing that and saying, no, I am first. Because when I am filled, when I'm happy, when I am loved by myself in that deep, beautiful, humble way, then that spills everywhere. That spills to my family, to my community in a healthy way where there are also boundaries. I cannot tell, we keep saying unconditional love, but there's also boundaries. There's boundaries. We have to have boundaries. If I don't have boundaries, even with my own thoughts, where my thoughts are going, and if I'm not saying, Lita, listen, like, it's cool. Like you can go down that pathway, sure. Where does it lead you? Is that a good life? Even in this very moment, where does it lead you? What about the rest of your day? And then let's change that. Let's see how that feels when you're in that positive self. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Yes, look at you. Look at you go. Look at you take care of your kids so well. Look at you take care of the animals. So look at yourself. And so, and having that honest evaluation. And sometimes it's also seeing that, yeah, I fucked up, you know, and learning from that. And that's okay too. Um,
Yeah, what I really like what you're saying is that there is just like everything, a shadow and a light to each of these strategies that we have. Fawning is a strategy, right? It's an adaptive strategy that we've learned through culturally, biologically, all of these things. And there's a light and a shadow to both. One, I think, engenders connection, and the other disconnection from self. And so there is a light, and the same with loyalty, right? Like, because it can fall into that. There's a dysfunctional loyalty and there's a functional loyalty. And so just because somebody has the fawning, people pleasing, it's not all bad. So we just had this facilitator meetup, and I had a guy named JD Garrett. He is an executive coach, and a criminal and psychological profiler. And so he came and talked about the 12 approaches. So there's fight, flight, freeze. Then there's fawn, tend, and befriend. And then there's like armor. There's a bunch. He's identified 12. And he goes through the light and the shadow. And I have it in my bag right there what the light version of fawn is. And spending a lot of time going into the light because we hear about that so much less than we hear about the dysfunctional part of people pleasing and fawning.
right. No, for sure. For sure. And let me tell you, so the positive side of it is the community building, is that how to be there for people, especially in times of difficulty.
I think
So
it might be nurture. It's something like nurture.
nurture. It makes sense.
But yeah, so and that I mean this is the Integration Chronicles. We're talking about how do we integrate this understanding, right? And like find more love and acceptance. But that's what it is integrating the light and the dark of our particular adaptive strategy so it can become our superpower as
Yeah,
opposed to something that, yeah, that drains us or depletes us.
beautiful. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so in what ways has your approach to guiding others shifted since you began integrating your own experiences? So, now that you have really worked on this people pleasing and some of the other things you've been working through, how has that shifted your ability to hold space and transformation for others?
There's a strength in it. There's a power in it that comes, there's a connection that comes from true authenticity and not tilted in any way. Is and also being able to tell people the truth with kindness, when they want to hear it, when they're ready to hear it, when they ask for it, instead of just try to, again, enable them in the same direction that they were in it. We're not doing them a favor. We're just making them like us and not really helping them on their path. And So there's a maturity of that that's happened over time. There's a lot more wisdom in it. There's more strength. There's more confidence. Um, of my voice. And so because my voice is my more confident, they are able to receive it during a facilitation with more ease. Even in, facilitation, I'm a feeler, and I think we're all feelers to some degree, of course, right? Feeling people and what they're going through, and also being a channel to what they need to hear or even touch. So I'm a physician, osteopathic physician. So I do manipulative treatment on people during their journeys too, when it is indicated. And I ask for consent from the beginning. I tell them, hey, is it okay if if I do like a trigger touch on you, if I feel that there is a stuckness in the body to allow you to get through. And so, almost everybody says yes, and it makes a huge difference in their journey. But, from the integration side, after the fact, it's the same thing. It's a continuation of the same thing. I'm like, hey, remember that's what happened. And I take notes, and I take voices, and, not just videos sometimes if they want me to. Um, but I use voice recording, and I send it to them as an integration tool. And then sometimes we review that, or they review it and they have questions. But really, that presence that we bring as facilitators during the facilitation informs the integration very strongly, and what this individual needs after their session.
Beautiful. What is your favorite integration tool?
Such a great question. Honestly, it's the self-care methods. I have 20 conscious life practices that we implement with my clients before we go into session. And then when we come out of session, that's what keeps coming up. And I've thought it's different things, but man, do we need to go back to the self-care. It's all about how am I taking care of my body? How am I taking care of my soul, my emotional well-being? Am I allowing the processing to happen or blocking it? How am I taking care of me, my entire being? And when people they fall off the conscious life practices. And then I have community. That's another huge one. Community integration. And then the support that comes from the community is really big. I hope I've answered that question.
Yes. Well, I'm curious if you could give us two of your favorite self-care tips.
Yes. I have so many. I have so many. Um, One is ritual. Ritual, as in, I'll give you an example. Like, next to my bedside, I have a sheepskin on the ground. Every morning, I wake up, I sit on the ground before touching my phone or technology or talking to anybody. And I meditate for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning. And then I'll write. If I had a dream, I'll write it and I'll process it. And then I also have my crystals that feel right to me in this moment. And recently, I have a bell that I just adore the sound of. And so I ring the bell with gratitude and with intention for the day that I have. The vibration that comes from that has just been incredible. But as an integration, tool, I would say that ritual in itself, it changes the vibration of the day. And integration is all about, hey, the things that we learn in these wonderful psychedelic states, how do I bring it and implement it into my life, in my daily life? And a lot of them is about, what you're shown is with clarity. Yeah, the patterns that you've carried, the survival strategies that you've carried with yourself, the armor that you have just layered on top of yourself. And now, after, during ceremony, it's all gone and you're soft and mushy. And a lot of people get scared of that. And then afterwards, what I also see is like people try to, you know, get
Suck all
back into
back in.
cell, right? Because those toxic patterns were comfortable, right? But when we implement these self-care methods, the meditation, the ritual, hydration is a really big one. Where most of us are very dehydrated. That's another one that's really big. 75% of our bodies are made out of water. 85% of the brain is water. And if I'm not hydrating, I'm not allowing the toxins to leave my body. There's no flow.
Mm.
And that's another big one. And then connection with community is absolutely huge. I would say that's my top three.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really
Heart.
helpful. I love giving the listeners, the readers, really actionable, practical steps that they can take. Like, okay, if I could just, start adding this to my routine. And I like to really add intentionality, mindfulness to that.
Mhm.
You just chug water and like, if you can, you pair rituals with drinking water. Make your drinking water a ritual where you're really being mindful and I'm just taking such good care of my body. I'm hydrating. I love you. This is so good for me. And like really just pairing the emotion with because a ritual is a habit that's added that you've added some emotion to it. So it's much more likely that it's going to stick than a habit that you just kind of like force yourself to do over and over. A ritual adds intention and mindfulness and emotion to it. And then it really starts to become a part of your life as well.
Absolutely. It becomes meaningful. And that energy exchange that you have, that's what's delicious and you want more of it. Same thing. And I love how you said that. Same thing with building relationships that are meaningful to you. And a lot of times what happens is we know some relationships drop off. And people have to be ready for that. I think that's got to be something that is talked about. And then some other relationships come forward or new relationships come forward that are attracted to that new frequency, which is so incredible. But nurturing, like, for me, calling up my mom or my aunt, in a different country and having it really heartfelt and vulnerable conversation is so rejuvenating. So rejuvenating because that individual I know is not going to judge me. Or even if they do, I don't care. I'm going to be vulnerable. And in that vulnerable state, I can really connect heart to heart. And the other person is usually opening up to in ways that they didn't before.
Yes. So we had to make a last minute pivot to Zoom and we're using the free version. So it's about to cut off in about 3 minutes. So I just want to make sure that you give our listeners, our audience, any type of offerings that you have. If people want to connect with you or follow you, please let them know.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, a little bit on TikTok, and I have my website, drlitafitemi.com. I do offer facilitation. A lot of what I do is it's all about self-discovery is what I do for especially healthcare professionals who are burnt out and moms specifically and with also microdosing. And what I see, I've also written a book that summarizes my program in 300 pages. I wrote this book for 2 years and did a ton of research on this book personally and also scientifically and also through about 150 professionals that I held space for. There are stories in there with, most of them microdosing, some stories and some information about macrodosing, but it's science and spirituality and optimization and self-care and self-love all in one. I haven't seen one yet on the market that is that comprehensive. Just looking at ourselves from many different angles, 20 conscious life practices with psilocybin or any other psychedelic, if you will. So you can find my book on my website. I can send you a signed copy through that, or you can get it on Amazon. It's also on Audible. I got a best-selling author out of that, which I'm so excited for. And lastly, I'm going to switch my company into a nonprofit, Conscious Physician into a nonprofit. So I can serve, at a with a bigger reach,
Wow, incredible. That's beautiful. I can't wait to read that. That
Thank you.
is how exciting.
Thank
Lita,
you.
thank you so much again. Lita is also on the TAP integration platform as a facilitator. So she's one of our beta testers, which I'm just so thankful for. So if you like, we can switch over to Google Meet and I can show you how to do that really quick.
I
All right.
love
So
it.
much for listening, for reading, for watching. We'll talk to you later. Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Bye.